That's how I feel when I go to San Francisco. I'm the Swedish-speaking kid from the countryside.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Term Sheet. I'm Allie Garfinkel, senior writer here at Fortune. And every week on the Term Sheet podcast, we go over the latest news and insights in venture capital, private equity, and startups. Here's where you can get a sneak peek behind the curtain of VC in the finance world. And every week we catch up with some of the most exciting figures in the private markets. Today we're talking to a very exciting person in the private markets who's about to jump ship to the public markets. This week, the big news is Klarna. It's funny, people have been talking about Klarna going public for the entire time I've been a tech journalist. And by the time you see this, by the time you watch this, it will finally be the day. Klarna will be a public company, and the company's co-founder, Sebastian Siemiatkowski, will have rung the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, there's a lot we don't know as we're sitting recording this. We don't know pricing. We don't know how that first day is going to perform. But what we do know is that this is extremely anomalous for a company to be co-founded by one person, for that person to stay the CEO, and then eventually ring that bell. I had an investor once tell me that the odds of that were 0.0001%. And that's why I was really excited to talk to Sebastian, to really level set, check in with how he was feeling, get a sense of what the journey's been like, what the roadshow's been like, and where he sees this all going, not only in terms of AI, but in terms of Klarna's future. Let's jump right in. Sebastian, welcome to Term Sheet.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. You know, there's something going on right now, I would say, or something's about to happen. We're sitting here with you a few days before the IPO. It's a Friday. What's going through your mind right now? What has this process been like? Take us inside the days leading up to a day you've been working towards for 2 decades.
Right. Well, there are a few things. I think first and foremost, like I think the best part actually of the roadshow was when we checked into a Manhattan office of one of our investors, and the guy in the reception checking our IDs is like, "Oh, you're from Klarna," and we're like, "Oh, yeah, you know it?" And he's like, "I love it. I use it all the time." And then we say, "Oh, okay. So tell us what we could do better." And he's like, "Well, I just want to get the card. I'm on the waiting list." So I think that was the epiphany. That was the best moment on the whole roadshow. Even though we obviously had a lot of fun with you investors, don't worry, we enjoy those conversations as well. But like that was my golden moment. I think it is interesting because people talk about this kind of thing of ringing the bell and IPOing and working towards this. But personally, I'll tell you, Ali, that to some degree, like I look forward to it. I'm sure it's a cool event, but there are other events that to me on an emotional level, I tell you one of my like epiphanies on an emotional level is actually quite recent. When I was invited to go to Bentonville, Arkansas, to try to finalize the deal with Walmart. And I'm in Bentonville, right? And you have to remember, I'm a kid from Sweden, the small country of Sweden, from a small place called Uppsala. And I read the book of Ingvar Kamprad and Sam Walton and these books when I was a kid, and I dreamt about this. And I'm in Bentonville, and I checked on Google Maps, like what's related to Walmart is there? And the museum was refurbishing, so I couldn't go there. So the only other place I could go was his grave. The graveyard in Bentonville where Sam is buried. And people are superstitious, so they put money on his grave. So there's tons of money on his grave because people think they're going to get rich if they put money on his grave. But standing there after 20 years and thinking like, wow, I'm actually on the cusp of signing and working with the biggest retailer in the world, who I have admired Sam Walton and his accomplishments my whole life. I got to tell you, like, I'm sorry, but it's not going to beat ringing the bell. That to me was more emotional. So I'm going to look forward. It's going to be amazing ringing the bell, but that is that's much more me.
You as a kid idolized Sam Walton. As a kid in Sweden, how did that happen?
Well, I think that the interesting thing, right, is that when you're an immigrant kid like me, my parents fled Poland, communist country where they didn't see an economical future. And then you end up having these academics for parents who, have all the intellectual capacity in the world, but find it difficult to integrate into a new society like Sweden. And especially Sweden back then, you really had to know Swedish. You had to speak Swedish properly. It's a difficult language to learn. And my father ended up, instead of becoming a doctor as he dreamt of, he ended up, driving a cab or even being unemployed. My mom was an early retiree. And then they ended up pouring, and fighting a lot, and they divorced when I was 8. Got together and then divorced again, and they were continuing doing that for a while. and you end up coming to the conclusion that money would have solved it all, which you unfortunately later in long life realize it's not that easy. Money doesn't solve it all. But at that point of time, I think it was one of my conclusions was, and then for whatever, and that just in combination with the excitement, like, Sam Walton, he used to fly a plane because he had to go between can you imagine that? Like growing his company in the 60s and 70s, flying a plane and he would come to New York and they would all scoff him away because he was the kid from the countryside. And, like, oh, yeah, the small guy's building some stores out in nowhere. Like, we're building them in New York and in LA. And then he just wins. And, like, that's how I feel when I go to San Francisco. I'm the Swedish-speaking kid from the countryside. And then, like, yeah, maybe, please, can anyone take a meeting with me because I'm here this weekend? Like, so I can recognize myself in those stories a lot. And they excite me, obviously.
Well, I was going to say, do you believe there is a part of us that is always who we once were? Like, is there a part of you that as you go through this roadshow still feels like that kid?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I sometimes go into meetings and I'm like, why are all the grown-ups here? What am I doing in this room? Like, I go to parties and wonder why I'm not sitting at the kids' table still. Like, why am I not supposed to sit? Am I really supposed?
You've been asked the question, when will Klarna go public, for years now. Why was now the time?
It's a good question. I think that me and Michael Moritz has been on my board and chairman for such a long period of time. I mean, it's amazing. Michael has committed to this company 16 years of his life. We, I think, had a very a similar view, and that was that Google was kind of the optimal IPO in the sense that, like, they had a proven business model, and they had a global coverage, but they were still early in the growth of that company, right, when they IPO'd. And that was always what I dreamt of Klarna's IPO being like. And I feel like we had to prove to be global, needed to be success in the US. And success in the US couldn't just be losing a lot of money here, but actually, making a profit here as well. So, and those were accomplished the last 1 or 2 years. And then that was kind of ticking all the boxes. And I still think Klarna has a tremendous amount of growth ahead of itself. So I think it was like, that was pretty much it. I mean, me personally, I'm not selling a single share. I've even, increased my economical interest recently in Klarna. I've borrowed $112 million to do that. So the point is that, like, but obviously there's 1,500 shareholders. We've had people who raised money over the last 20 years. There's going to be some people wanting to see at least part of the stock that they invested in, some liquidity. So I think it's not more complex than that, really.
One of the things that I really like about covering Klarna is that I actually use it. So I'm going to tell you how I use Klarna.
Yeah.
You're like, yes, this is my thing. I actually have used buy now, pay later on it before, but mostly I use it to buy sneakers outright. Like, I use it to feed my sneaker addiction. I like the UX. Buy now, pay later has long been associated with Klarna, but a significant portion of your revenue is also from other parts of the business. What do you think is most misunderstood about Klarna's business model?
But that is actually, Michael asked me, like, so what's the impression from the roadshow? And I thought I couldn't answer him directly, but then the day after I stepped on it, it was exactly that, which is that for the first time I'm meeting investors, and the first question is not buy now, pay later. The first question is, how are you going to disrupt retail banking? What could this mean for JP Morgan Chase and the others? How is this going to change the industry? They're a question of that type, which makes me super excited because that's always what I wanted to do. And that's always what I've, set out to do. So I think that that is the misconception. The misconception is very much, buy now, pay later, credit, young people, these kind of things. And it takes a little bit of time, but I feel like the message is getting through. And to some degree, buy now, pay later for us is like, it's both a blessing and a curse, right? Like, it was a blessing in the sense that it opened the market in the US, people got to know us as a brand, but it's a curse because then you're like talking to somebody doing subscriptions at OpenAI and you're like, hey, why are you not offering Klarna as a payment method for subscriptions? And they're like, why would I do buy now, pay later? And we're like, my God, I work with Spotify, I work with Disney Plus, like, there's tons of things you can do with Klarna. And then get the memes and people go like, oh, burritos on installments, DoorDash, ha ha ha, like, and it's kind of funny, but at the same point of time, yeah, but it's not about doing burritos on installments. It's because we're a wallet like PayPal, and you can pay us for, and so forth, right? So I think that is obviously, to your point, that is the most misconception, is this whole buy now, pay later thing. It's a product, it's a feature, it's a great feature, but it's just one of many.
Well, and to your point about it being a blessing and a curse, it is, you guys are part of that iconic set of buy now, pay later companies, but also have kind of moved beyond that. I mean, folks are asking you about JP Morgan Chase, for example. Who do you even consider competitors at this point?
No, but I think that, look, I think as any disruption, right? Like obviously I look at what Max is doing with the firm. Me and Max have a fun, long history. I'll go back. But I also look a lot at what Nick is doing with Revolut in Europe, which is less spoken about. And that's actually one of my main messages to the investors here has been like, guys, you're asking about a firm. In 2 years, the only thing you're going to ask us about is Revolut. That's what you're going to be asking about. Nubank, David, what they're doing. So, but to be fair, credit cards is a $1.2 trillion industry. Retail banking is a huge industry with massive excess profits, with very, low customer mobility because switching is so hard and we're not that engaged. And it's the incumbents who are the opportunity for us, right? And obviously I watch the others. I watch Affirm, I watch Revolut, I watch Square Block, what they're doing. But we are still such a small proportion of the total retail banking industry. So the true competitors are going to be the incumbents and going after their market share.
Well, I was going to say, and what's the plan once you're public? I imagine being a public company is part of that process.
Yeah.
What does that process look like?
No, but it's exactly that. I mean, I think that the difference, if you look at a firm, they're like, I can't remember, but about, I think, a little bit less than 30 million users or something. Revolut is kind of slightly more. Klarna is 111 million users. So when it comes to number of users, we're far beyond any of those. It's only basically PayPal maybe that, on a comparable level. Even I think we're at the same size as Amex when it comes to number of users, to be honest. But obviously, those users may use us occasionally, once per month or something like. On average, they use us once per month, right? So the big thing now is to show more people that we offer more services and that we have more. So like the card, for example, we're very excited about that. In the last few weeks, we've signed 700,000 people in the US up for the new card. We have 5 million people on the waiting list. And we're like super excited about getting that card into the hands of more of our users. So because even if half of our 111 million ends up being a card holder, then we would be one of the largest issuers of cards in the world, right? So like there's a huge potential, but our focus has really been on growing the user base. And now more and more of it's going to be about how we present to our customers that we can do great things for them beyond just, making a purchase online.
Sort of to this end, what do you see as the future of financial services?
And that's actually very interesting because when we launched this company, it was all like buy now, pay later, buy this. And it actually wasn't even about credit. People don't understand that. But people who have debit, this is my Blockbuster cap. If I buy this online, which I didn't because I went all the way to Bend, Oregon to buy it. So, but if I would have bought it online, then I don't like the concept if I'm on debit to send money and then maybe it will show up, right? So the benefit of credit is I paid once I've received it and I see it's exactly the cap that I wanted, right? So that was the original idea. And then in 2010, we were like, no, let's do checkout. Let's do payments processing for retailers. And then we're just going to compete with this irrelevant small companies. One was these Irish brothers. They started this thing called Stripe. Don't worry about it. It's not that good. And then there's these Dutch guys, and I went down to Peter, the CEO of Adyen, and I was like, Peter, sell your company to me. I'm going to run you over. I'm much bigger and greater. And he just laughed me off. Took me a few years to mend that relationship back, but I love Peter now. We're good friends. So, but in 15, we had to, in 15, Adyen signed Spotify, and we're like, okay, Stripe and Adyen are killing it. Let's do something else. We had to pivot. And when we did that in 15, we said, what's the future, to answer your question, what's the future of retail banking, future financial services? But well, at some point in time, you're going to wake up in the morning and your digital financial assistant will be like, hey, I've analyzed your mortgage. I realized I could save you $50 a month. And the only thing you need to do is say, yes, I'll do all the paperwork for you and I'll switch for you, right? And you'll be like, do you care that you had Barclays or JP Morgan Chase? Like, do you care where your mortgage is from? You're just like, give me the $50. I want to use it for something else. So the conclusion was banking is going to become two things: very efficient balance sheets, and a lot of the incumbents will simply become very efficient balance sheets, or you're going to be a digital financial assistant. You're going to be the one that truly takes your customer's best interest at heart and save them time, save them money, and make them feel in control of their finances. which was kind of the purpose of being a bank. If we go back to like the traditional idea of what a bank was supposed to be, but then, they got the fancy offices and their beautiful suits, and they started being more obsessed about making money for themselves than making money for us as customers, right? And then we suddenly end up paying tons of things for insurance and for, this and that. And you're like, how did this all go about? So I think it's going to come back to where it was supposed to be. Value for customer. And then, of course, even though the mortgage example is one that's very real, easy for people to comprehend, the truth is you don't think about you take your mortgage decision once per decade, but your contact lenses or your phone subscription or all that things, those are everyday purchases where a company or an assistant that's truly acting in your best interest can make a huge difference on your stress and your and your ability to focus on the right things and stuff. And I think that's the future of retail banking. And we want to be that assistant of our customers, right? And it's a little bit like self-driving cars. I've always felt this is going to happen. I always argue that my daughter, who's now 12, is not going to get a driver's license. But in 17, it sounded like it's going to happen tomorrow. But now I'm in San Francisco, and I do the Waymo, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's finally happened, right? It just took a
You're genuinely excited about that Waymo.
I love it. I love it.
You're here for the Waymo. This gets us to AI because eventually everything gets us to AI.
Yeah.
You once said to me that you went to Sam Altman and said, "I want Klarna to be OpenAI's favorite guinea pig."
Yep.
How's that going?
No, I hope we are their favorite guinea pig. But I think also that we are super, bullish on the relationship with OpenAI, and we hope to be able to help them in their pursuit of doing agentic shopping and all these things. I think there's tremendous opportunity to cooperate on those topics. But also we think that we want to really, because it's fun. Obviously people are interested because we're like, oh, we dropped Salesforce, or we dropped Workday, or we dropped now Atlassian, we're dropping Atlassian and Jira and all that stuff. And people are very keen on understanding, how are you doing that? How are you using AI with that Klarna? But the truth is, all of that is just I don't know. I think we saved $2 million in license cost of Salesforce. That's not going to move our P&L. It's not going to make us more successful. It's a nice saving, but it's not going to move the needle for a company of our size. So what's it really about is, as much as we're OpenAI's favorite guinea pigs, we ourselves, as employees of Klarna, are guinea pigs of our own AI services that we're building internally. And the benefit of that is then we want to bring that to our consumers and to our merchants to create a next generation of that digital retail, digital financial assistant that I described earlier. But we have to test it on ourselves first and make sure that it is as great and it's really helping us and it's making us, allow us to save time and money and be more in control of our finances. So I think that's the key. And now, of the stuff we built internally, I don't know when it's going to get launched, if it's weeks or months, but it looks really, really cool when I try it myself. It's freaking amazing. It's mixing AI with deterministic code. It's doing some really, really nice things. It's providing a next generation of a banking and shopping experience. So I'm really, really excited about it, and to bring that to market, because that, ultimately has to be the goal, right? If you really want to deliver on that vision, you have to use AI for that. And so it's very, very promising, and I'm very excited about it.
I also read that you used an AI avatar last quarter
Yeah.
to present earnings. Why did you do that?
Because after doing a lot of investor calls, you feel like this is not that different than the previous ones. It'd be nice if some avatar could step in and do it for me, save a little bit of time. But it's also just because, I think people end up debating and talking so much, and stop talking. People try things, learn, experiment, be curious. I think this is the maybe largest technical shift we're going to go through in our lives. And if you're just sitting there and you're talking about it, you're not learning anything. Since May, I've been on Cursor myself, coding every day, just because I want to learn. I want to understand this thing at the core, right? I want to really understand it. And I think trying things like this is extremely helpful to learn. How can this technology be applied, right, for the benefit of our customers? So I think that's really the main reason, to be honest.
You mentioned vibe coding. I actually heard you've been doing quite a bit of vibe coding lately. How much is a lot of vibe coding?
Oh, you should ask my wife, because she's been complaining that every evening after dinner, I'm like, hey, Nina, I just want to go away and I just need to punch in some commands to my cursor. So I think yeah, if you ask her too much, a lot.
What are you vibe coding and why are you spending so much time on it?
Well, as I tweeted, the truth is I've been vibe coding for 20 years because I've been going into a room. I'm on like I still regret I never became an engineer. I should have learned to code properly. I did some HTML code, whatever, but it's not the real thing. I should have done that. And so I've been vibe coding as a CEO for 20 years. I come into a room and I say, guys, the product people and the engineers like, hey, we should build something. It should work like this. Our customers want that, etc. And they're listening, taking notes, come with some ideas. Then they come back a few weeks later. There's like, here's a prototype. And I was like, no, not like that. I want it to work like this and the copy there. And I want the screen. And then, after many of those iterations, we ship a product, right? And that's vibe coding. Like, I don't read the code. I don't know what the actual code and how they actually implemented whatever I was talking to them in that meeting is. I just look at the outcome and I'm like, okay, either the product works or it doesn't work, right? Like, or it's good or it's, easy to do or not. And that's vibe coding. The only difference now is I can do it directly with a computer. And when I suggest to a computer it should work like this, 10 minutes later, it's funny because the computer always says, this will take us 6 weeks to implement. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And like half an hour later, it's like, here it is. And then you're like, no, it's not. You're just saying that. Let me test it. Doesn't work. Okay, go and fix it. But 2 hours later, it actually works. And it's just, but because it's also dangerous when I think this is very critical. I think a lot of founders miss this. When I was sitting in the room myself in a startup, I wasn't coding, but I was so close to the engineers and the product people that every bad idea I had, they would either show me why it didn't work, or we would try it and we would realize it didn't work. And there would be and because the relationships were closer and because everyone knew each other and because I wasn't the big, great CEO and I was just like, a kid, their same age as them in the same room, they wouldn't be afraid of telling me that that was a horrible idea, right? Now, the difference you get when you're a CEO is you're sitting there, you see some prototypes and stuff, and you're like, I'm the smartest guy in the world. I'm going to tell you how to build this. But like half of the ideas that you're telling them are crap. They don't work in practice. And then you're just getting people working on the wrong stuff. And, obviously I wish I could have bigger ears and a smaller mouth and listen more and stuff. And maybe I could mend some of this. But the points, and then people get afraid, like, oh, it's the big CEO in the room. I'm not going to tell him how stupid that what he just said is. So there's a lot of things that happen in that process as you grow up and the company becomes larger. And the benefit I have now with AI is I can take one of my ideas and I can say, let me go and prototype it. And then I can come back and I can say, guys, I've tested my idea. I know it actually worked. Let me show you how I implemented it. Let me show you how the code looks like. And then that just makes me, I think, a better leader. It makes me more realistic. It makes me also learn and understand what I'm doing is right. And it doesn't mean necessarily you put it in production because that's a different thing. You want to put it in production, needs to, serve hundreds of millions of people at the same point. Like it's a different thing. But prototyping and showing and visualizing an idea rather than just describing it is very powerful. It's very, very powerful.
Well, and it sounds like it's also allowed you to sort of filter out the ideas that aren't going to necessarily work because you're like, oh, I tried this. I actually am not going to send somebody to go do this. I mean, do you think it's only a matter of time before something that you or someone else at Klarna has vibe coded becomes a product?
Yeah, no, I think it is a matter of time. Like I actually recorded a recording for for everyone working at Klarna. And it was basically this. I don't have my phone here. I got a text message from Klarna, and the text message was something like, you have missed your OpenAI payment for $250. It's an expensive thing. $250. And pay now. And I was like, come on, that's not how we should talk to our customers. Like, this is a very bad text message. So historically, what I would have done, I would have gone to my management team. I would have said like, hey guys, somebody needs to fix this. This is horrible. And then they would have gone and tried to find a team that has the code and then get a new copy for the text message, get it approved by the marketing department, blah, blah. And now what I did, I opened Cursor. I went to our internal knowledge hub. I said, hey, tell me which repository is the text message in. It showed me, oh, it's in this repository. I downloaded the repository. I found the code where that exact text message was coded. And I said, hey, let's, can you ChatGPT, sorry, this was Claude. Can you, Claude, write me a better message using the brand guidelines that we have? And it's like, yeah, I did. Here's the new copy. Like, don't add additional features because the engineers will yell at me that I'm trying to make it too complex. Just fix the copy, and then commit it so they can code review it and put it in production. Took me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And I share this with the organization because I said, look, guys, you all got to learn to do this. Whether you're business or engineers, I don't care. We're all going to learn how to do this because it's empowering. It's allowing all of you to do that. Doesn't mean that we ship that into production. Engineers will do code review. They will check that it's right, that it's, according to what we're trying to do. But imagine how it can accelerate us. And a lot of people in Klarna, slacked me afterwards to send a message on Slack. They're like, we'd love to do this. The only problem is we need to go and ask marketing for approval when we change the copy. And we need to find out who can write the copy. And we need to it's like, no, you don't. Not anymore. So it turns out that a lot of these kind of day-to-day improvements, they get stuck in a large organization. We ask so many people for their opinions, their input. There's so much delegation. That's actually what's slowing us down, right? And if we can find a way to work in a new way where we can empower people to be allowed to make these changes and improve our customers' lives, then we can accelerate so much. So I'm very, very excited about that.
You've previously said that Klarna's AI does the customer service work of about 700 people. This generated quite a few interesting headlines. But what have you learned about where automation shines and where it has limitations?
So a few things. And I think that's also media has a hard time allowing companies like Klarna and two narratives to be true at the same point of time. Because then we said that we're going to start hiring again. And then people are like, oh, look, they failed. I was like, and now the funny thing is that if you're for AI, you're using Klarna as an example. If you're against AI, you're using Klarna as an example, which is kind of funny. I'm laughing at me and Philippa are laughing at that when we're reading the articles. The point was the following. In a world of AI, the value of human relationship and interaction is going to increase. It's going to be seen as, the AI will be the basic, simple, cost-efficient way of communication. The human relationship will be treated as a premium thing. That's just a fact. I'm 100% convinced about it, which means that what we realized is that as we make more basic errands and solutions with AI, we are also want to be committed to our customers to offer them human support if they want to speak to a human. It's like, and it's a little bit like, if you think about it, as manufacturing made a lot of things cheap to manufacture at low cost, we now appreciate so much when you go to the local craftsmanship place where somebody's crafted their own piece of furniture or made their own piece of, we appreciate those things so much more nowadays, where, more than 100 years ago. So I think that's one thing to be very, very mindful of. And then the other thing that you have to be mindful of is also that it doesn't get spoken about that much, but I think it's been very critical for Klarna is that we told our employees we're not laying off. We are basically only stopped recruiting, which, in a company where people stay on average 5 years means that you basically, people leave, about 20% leave every year naturally, just natural attrition. So you just shrink, right? But at the same point of time, we've had a very clear commitment to our employees. And we said, look, the savings that this on payroll that this will mean, a big part of that is going to be reinvested in an acceleration of your compensation. So if you decide to join this with us and participate in this, then you will benefit as an employee of Klarna if you decide to stay with us. And I think it doesn't mean that there aren't people that are afraid of the consequences of AI to jobs and stuff. But I think at least for our employees have created a positive emotional connection to all of this, that this leads us to become better, to offer better services, but it also has positive implications for their own payroll, their own cash, their own equity in Klarna.
By the time this comes out, you'll have rung the bell. The company you founded in 2005 will be a public company. It is, regardless of what happens after that, you are an incredible statistical anomaly. Right. I once asked an investor, how often does this happen watching a founder at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange? And he was like, 0.001% of the time. I don't even know. Pre-IPO, how are you thinking about expectations? What does success look like from a year from now? Especially because it is kind of just the first day of the rest of your life.
Exactly. It's a bit like marriage, right? It's a big party, but then life goes on. I think that No, I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a very interesting experience. But I'm not selling a single share in this. I'm committed to the company. I hope to get a few more decades running Klarna. I would love to. I think it's a privilege to work with all these great people, and I think it's a privilege to be able to challenge a sector like retail banking that genuinely has forgotten about its customer and the value that they need to create, and to some degree even rip their customers off. So I think it's a fantastic thing to be part of that. No, so I think it's going to be really, really interesting. The only thing that I said on the more joking side to Philippa, I said, look, Klarna has also served a lot of drama in the news. You know, we had like boardroom struggles, and we had all of this, and the valuations going up and down. I just, so I said to Philippa, like, if this is Succession and this is, season 7, I just like, isn't it a little bit too smooth right now? Maybe like Max Levchin can like collude with my co-founders and come in and do like a hostile takeover at the end or something. Because like I'm a little bit worried about our ratings from a drama perspective here. Like, so it's like just an IPO. Like, I don't know. Isn't the audience expecting more from Klarna from a drama perspective? I've just that's the only concern.
You're out here saying, "Oh gosh, do I need to write a TV show? What are the writer or what's going on with the writers?"
Exactly.
But to that end, let's actually walk right into that because you've really weathered some ups and downs. You're gonna stand up there on the podium. Everyone's gonna talk about it like it's inevitability for one day, and then but you've ridden the roller coaster. What has been your biggest leadership lesson?
Well, look, I think that my biggest leadership question is that, and I think about it sometimes, in general, when I talk to younger entrepreneurs and so forth. And that is, I remember very clearly, I was on CNBC, and CNBC has been tough and fair on me when they've done interviews and stuff. But at the time when the valuation was coming down, and people wanted this to be a Klarna story, which was not true, because all the fintechs, I mean, PayPal, everyone dropped the same amount as we did from a valuation perspective. But people did it to the Klarna story. And CNBC at that point in time brought in this guy who suddenly pops up. I'm sitting at home, I'm being interviewed on live TV. This guy pops up, and he's just super aggressive. He's like, Sebastian, you have ruined this. This is the end. And he's like super aggressive. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was like, almost like I couldn't take it entirely, because I was sitting there being calm and trying to manage those questions as good as I can. And then I kind of hang up, and I go into my car to go to office, and I put on the Queen song, Under Pressure, I just put it on the maximum volume. And I was like, but you know what? Like, that was tough. It was super tough. And I was like, and I've had times when I've cried, and I've had times when I've been like super, stressed about things. But I also have to recognize I signed up for this. There's a very famous football player called Zlatan, who's born on the same day as me, from Sweden. And he signed up to play in Champions League. I signed up to play in Champions League. Can you imagine the stress when a sportsman person is coming into a Champions League final or coming into the NBA finals? Can you imagine the pressure from the audience? But do you want to give that away? I signed up for this. I want to be part of these things. I think it's exciting. I love the challenges that this work has given me, and I'm super excited about the challenges to come, because that is the part. Like, I signed up to experience these things, and it's part of it. So as much as I can get stressed, and I think it's very hard, I try to tell entrepreneurs that, like, but this is also what you signed up for, right? Like, this is it. It's not just going to be smooth sailing or easy. It's going to be tough, and sometimes it's going to be very tough. And if you look at it from that angle, then you can appreciate it and say, look, it's part of what you're going through. And when you become 80 and you sit and you're retired, and then you have some good stories to share with the other people in the retired place, like, you can share some good stories.
Have you seen Hamilton?
No. Should I?
You should. It is an immigrant story, actually. One of the most famous sets of lines in it is, you got skin in the game, you stay in the game, but you don't get a win unless you play in the game. You get love for it, you get hate for it, you get nothing if you wait for it.
Wow.
And I'm kind of like, is that why he's not selling shares? You still want to have skin in the game. You still want to be in the game.
I very much do. And I hope I get the privilege to continue. I love it so much. It's amazing. And there's so much things to be done still. So I love it. Thank you, Ali, so much for doing this.
Thank you, Sebastian. I know you've got to go. I know you have more road showing to do, but thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon again.
And that was Sebastian. This interview really made me think about how IPOs are still the end game for so many founders. Now, that seems obvious, but bear with me for a second. If your goal is to build a generational company, the thing you're not necessarily imagining is selling secondaries or doing an acqui-hire or finding an M&A route to an exit. This is actually probably, for a lot of founders and for a lot of investors still, the moment that you dream of. And it is still so rare. And Klarna is a really interesting case of a company that stayed private for a really long time. But the end game was still an IPO. The end game was still to belong to the public. And at this moment, we're actually seeing more IPOs after quite a drought. And Klarna really has some expectations going in today. After, for instance, Figma and Circle really popped, I think people will definitely be looking for that pop from Klarna. That being said, regardless of what we see today, it is also just the first day of the rest of the company's life. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Term Sheet is a Fortune magazine podcast. Our producer-editors are Alana Stev and Allison Rogers. Our executive producer is Lydia Randall. Our production manager is Sam Freund. Fortune's head of video is Adam Bannicky.